People are more satisfied with their luggage than they were about their marriages. This is what will blow me away. But if you come back to why people get this way, where they get more satisfaction with their home, they get more satisfaction with their car, they get more satisfaction with the luggage, it usually comes back down to the psychology they have with themselves. You know, you can connect with your car. Your car doesn't have an argument back with you. Your car doesn't judge you. Your house, you know, your house is your comfort space. It's your safe place. It doesn't judge you. All these other dynamic relationships that we get into, they can get a little hairy. And a lot of times when we get into these hairy relationships is where we start to second guess ourselves, and a lot of our fears kind of bubble up to the surface, and we feel exposed and we feel vulnerable. And when we get in those states of mind, you know, our decisions really are dictated by the frame of mind that we get in. So a lot of times when people sabotage their relationships or they sabotage their careers, it basically comes down to the state of mind that they put themselves in. And what tonight's going to be about is I'm going to take 5 principles tonight. I'm going to take, there's a couple questions that patients have asked, or I've asked patients over the years. A couple of them have been, why do you sabotage your health? Why do you sabotage your relationship? Why do you sabotage your career? What needs to happen to somebody for them to feel happy? What needs to happen for somebody to feel worthy about themselves? What needs to happen for somebody to be successful? And most of the time the answer isn't about money. You know, one of my questions I ask a lot of times is, why do you keep repeating the same mistakes? Or why do you keep repeating the same situation that comes into your life? And then, you know, with a group like this, one of the things that I would like to know from you guys is, or people who are struggling with this, is how much your weight loss issues are really about food. You know, and what's surprising, a lot of these answers are very similar to each other. Everybody has a lot of the same fears. They have a lot of the same insecurities. And, you know, the last question I like to ask, which I'm going to answer tonight, and I really want you to answer this yourselves, is how does having a weight problem serve you? Has it served you over the years? What is having a weight issue given you that you may not have recognized before in the past? So I want to answer these questions tonight. I want to go through some of what the answers have been with my patients, and then see how, you know, maybe they would relate to you a little bit. So here's something interesting too, is we make about 600. Each decision that we make is based on 3 things. It's based on, what are you focusing on? What does it mean to you? And then what are you going to do about it? Every second of every day, when your brain, the way your brain works is that it asks these 3 questions. It says, what are we focused on right now? What does it mean to me? And then what is it I think is the best course of action to do? And the decision that you're going to make out of that basically comes down from the state of the mind that you're in, your experiences, your failures, your pains, your pleasures, and all that gets calculated almost immediately, and in that instant you make the decision, and we go through that process at least 600 times a day. Just having some awareness on that is going to bring a little bit more clarity to some of the reasons why you do some of the things that you do. The first thing that people really should recognize is that this concept, or this principle of what people's greatest fears are, has really gone back to the beginning of time. If you study psychology, if you look at some of the research, you know, both my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law are psychologists, and most of my personal family goes to a psychologist. So we have a lot of experience with psychology here. So this isn't stuff that I've come up with. This is what I've learned over the years from a lot of experts, and putting it into practical application, it really seems to be true. I mean, it really seems to come down to these 2 things. People's 2 greatest fears are this, and we all have them. Number 1. Everybody, they have a fear of not being enough. We all just have a fear inside of us that we're not enough, and that who we are, it's not about how much money we have, it's that deep-seated fear that we're just not enough, that we're not going to satisfy others, or that we're going to be being vulnerable, we're just not enough with just who we are. Regardless of how much you weigh, regardless of what you've been through, regardless of the mistakes that you made, you are enough. You truly are enough. The other main pain that people have, or the greatest fear that people have, is their fear of the losing love of others. And this one drives home to so many people that we know. Just that simple, basic fear of losing the love of others just influences so many decisions that we've made. I mean, if you think about mammals in particular, you know, when a snake is born, it's literally on its own immediately. When a shark is born, he may have like a couple of hours where he gets protected. You know, mammals were the only animal that spend as much time as we do with their mothers and upbringing. And, you know, my sister-in-law just had a beautiful little baby girl the other day, and it just got me thinking about pregnancy again. And when people in particular have babies, when we come into this world, we literally come into this world helpless. We're completely vulnerable. Now women have an oxytocin chemical reaction where they're biochemically in love with this child, and men don't have the oxytocin reaction. We build the bond with the child, and we get to see a reflection of our lives. And we see that life continues on, and we build up that bond. But women in particular have this oxytocin that runs through the body, and they absolutely love this baby no matter what this baby does. And this baby is beautiful, and it cries, and it throws up, and it poops on itself, and every want and need that it has, it gets instantaneous. And it's because of the love that we have for this child, and this child survives because of the love that the parents have for this baby. But what happens is we start to get a little older. We get a little older, we try doing some of the same things we did before, like pooping our pants or crying, and we don't get the same kind of reaction that we got when we were little babies. And as that oxytocin wears off and independence starts to come into the child, and there's just a different relationship, and there's just a different set of needs that are met. But we're all wired, as human beings, we're all wired to crave and need the love of others. And it's a very powerful driving force. But where this can kind of come up with some conflicts is that we can start to develop some limiting beliefs. And in a limiting belief, if you're not sure what a limiting belief is, it's, ask yourself, I can't do something, and then the reason that comes next is your limiting belief. Now, there are limiting beliefs that serve you for the most part, like if you believe that I jump off a bridge and I'm going to hurt myself, from a 30-foot fall, experience is going to tell you that. So that's a limiting belief that's going to protect you. But the belief isn't so much limiting because it's a protective belief. There's a difference between a protective belief that's trying to protect you from death and a limiting belief that is really holding on to you not having one of your greatest fears come true. Let me say it again. So if you have a limiting belief where it keeps you from doing an action like, let's say, losing weight or pursuing a relationship that it's, outside of, your comfort zone where you have to go introduce yourself to somebody else and you have that fear of vulnerability. Stepping out of that, a limiting belief would be, oh, they wouldn't want to date me anyway, or they wouldn't find me attractive, or I don't have enough money to, or I don't have the right career, or I don't live close enough to that person, or I don't look good enough. And those are all limiting beliefs, and we all have them. And we have these conflicting limiting beliefs that basically dictate what level of life or what level of success that we're going to feel inside of it. Now, success not meaning how much money we're going to make, but how much emotional success that we're going to have. And the more you address and question the limiting beliefs that you have, the greater emotional success you're going to have. And I know this personally from my personal experience. I mean, if you guys haven't met my wife, Angela, I'm totally in love with my wife, Angela. Even when I met my wife, Angela, I was thinking at the time, what did I have to do? Who did I have to become to be this person? I got so caught up in it didn't matter. My limiting beliefs got shattered because whatever I had to do, I was going to do whatever I had to do to get a woman like that. So sometimes it's the carrot that pulls us out of our limiting beliefs, or sometimes it's a heart attack, or sometimes it's bankruptcy, or sometimes it's just these devastating things that happen that we have to change these things. So think through between when you were 19, 20 to your 30s to your 40s, if you're older than that right now, is that what are some of the limiting beliefs that you've had back then that you no longer have now? And if that's the case, if you can look back and see some things that you maybe believed were most important to you back then, or things that held you back back then, but they wouldn't hold you back now, then what are you doing today that you might look back in 10 years and ask yourself, well, what were my limiting beliefs? And just being aware of those can really kind of open different parts of your pathways up to kind of opening up to new things. And it also can make you much more clarity when it comes to your decision making. So I want to go through this. This is the 6 human needs. This is really kind of the ground floor of where all the wellness psychology comes from. So one of the questions that I ask is, what needs to happen for anyone, for you in particular, or if you're working with your children, or if you're coaching other people, what needs to happen for somebody to feel to really truly feel happy? What needs to happen for them to feel worthy, or what needs to happen for them to feel successful? And every human being has these 6 human needs. In other 6, if you break these 6 human needs down, this is not something that we want. This is something that we need. All of us need to feel that we're safe. All of us need to have a certain level of certainty in our life. Let's take, for example, if you don't feel safe in your home, or if you're in an elevator and all of a sudden the lights go out and you hear it screeching, it's about to fall, everything else takes second place to that. Your focus goes nowhere else other than getting safe. And now, these 6 human needs, each one of us is driven by that, whatever our top 2 human needs are. That kind of drives us towards our decisions. But the second need that we want, which is just as crazy, God in His infinite wisdom created this paradox that as much as we need safety and certainty, we also need uncertainty. We need variety. We need these surprises. And, surprises we all need and want, but when we have surprises that we don't like, we call those problems. So a lot of problems in our life are very necessary for us as a need that we have to, that we have to have as human beings. It's part of what our growth process is. It's just that if you don't like them, they're a problem. If you like them, they're surprises. That's part of the uncertainty and variety that we all get out of our life. Number 3 is love and connection. We all need love and connection in our life. This is where I was blessed to meet somebody who is literally driven by not just connection, but love. A lot of people in their marriages and their relationships will settle for connection because love's too scary. But love is if you can fully get into a relationship with somebody, and hopefully you're the person who's driven by love. And I got this way the longer I was with Angela. But Angela, really, her primary function in life is to share love with other people. And it's one of the reasons why she loves to help other people. It's one of the reasons why, I'm such a happy and fulfilled husband, is because she literally exudes the love that comes out of her. Before I met Angela, I had other relationships, and I was in relationships where there was a feeling of love, but it was more of a connection and a friendship. And I never really understood the difference of what that meant until I met somebody who just truly is unconditionally in love with me, and I'm in love with her. And having those relationships in the past definitely have built up to where I am right now. But this is a need that we have, and a lot of people mistake the connection that they have with love. And this is where we get into some problems with decisions that get made. This is where we get into some problems when we call what we're going to talk about in a few minutes here called stacking emotions. The 4th need that we all have is significance. Every one of us on this phone tonight needs to know that we matter. Everybody who you meet, our children, again, patients and coworkers and relatives, everyone wants to feel significant. Everyone wants to feel that the life that they have matters. Nobody wants to leave this world and not feel like they made a difference. Nobody, in particular, masculine men, do not want to get up in the morning and not feel like that they matter. So I'm going to share this. I'm sure I've got it muted, so Angela will come and run here if she doesn't like the story. But when we first met, Angela was her primary drive. I mean, the way she lived is she lived through love. And I was at the stage in my life where I lived through significance, where I wanted to have love. And now, hear me out. If you're in one of these relationships, most masculine men, and there's a difference between masculine and feminine, and we all have masculine and feminine energy, but most masculine men are raised to think and are somewhat hardwired to feel like they need to be significant first. Men need to feel like, we all need to feel that we're wanted, but men in particular, masculine men, need to feel that they're wanted and that they're significant first before they'll allow love to come in. So I remember doing a consult with a young man about in his early 30s, and he just got fired. And I knew him for years before this, and he was just strong and powerful. But as soon as he lost his job, all of his self-worth, his relationships just completely dropped because he no longer felt significant anymore. His primary need that he was meeting was constantly out of significance. It wasn't out of love. It wasn't out of variety. It was about being significant. So however you place these needs in your life, whatever one surfaces to the top that's your driving need is going to highly influence the mood that you go into and the decisions that you make. The 5th need that we all have is contribution. We all have a need to contribute. We all have a need to give beyond ourselves. Now, 5 and 6 and growth, and the 6th need is growth and spirituality and emotional growth. Also, we all have these needs, and 5 and 6 right here are more of a spiritual need. You typically need to meet your first 4 needs before you can fulfill the 5th and the 6th need. But here's something I want you guys to get, because it's powerful. This is really powerful. If you can understand truly what these needs mean and how you're meeting them in your life, and not just you, but how the people around you are meeting them in their life. How is your husband? How is your wife? How are your children meeting these needs in their life? More importantly, how do you fit into how these needs are met for them? Statistically, if you fulfill 2 of these needs with anybody you meet, just fulfill 2 of these needs, you're going to have a very strong affinity with people. There's going to be an attractiveness to you. You fulfill 3 of these needs, and people start to get addicted to you. I know you guys have people in your life who just when you get around, you feel comfortable, you feel better about yourself, you feel safe, but they still keep it so that there's laughter, and then you feel like you grow just from being around. This person just fulfills 3 or 4 of your needs just by showing up. These are people who are highly conscious and usually excellent communicators because they found a way to meet their needs in a positive way, and they found a way to meet their needs that resonates with others and makes them connect easily with others, and it fulfills their value system. And they're basically in line with their values and their beliefs and their actions, which is just, it's a wonderful approach to take. If you fulfill four more of these, then nobody wants you out of your life. If you can fulfill 4 or more of these needs in somebody's life, then they're literally never going to get rid of you. So all divorce comes down to really one thing, is that people aren't getting their needs met. And a lot of dissatisfaction in people's lives comes from the way that they're trying to fulfill these needs. So we're going to run through a couple of these things tonight. And really what I'm hoping you get out of this tonight is to get a grasp of what the 6 human needs are. Now, these aren't mine. This is really from Chloe Madonis. She's a brilliant family counselor. And this is the framework that she does when she works with clients. I'll do phone calls with her about once a month and listen to how she handles a client. And basically, just listening to somebody speak and when they discuss their story about the situation that they're in or why they can't do something, or why they're having a health problem, or why they're having a relationship problem, you can very quickly see which needs are being met and which needs are not being met. So we get this a lot. This is a fascinating phenomenon. A lot of people are always repeating the same mistakes again. I mean, it's the same person who keeps going out and getting into the bad relationships. It's the same person that's trying to diet and keeps getting, does pretty well for, then kind of goes back. There's a pattern that we call, it's called a crazy 8 emotional pattern. I'm going to walk you through this diagram here. I don't have a pointer, so I'm just going to have to walk through this verbally. The main thing you want to see here is a lot of people get into this crazy 8 rut, and they can stay in this for a day, an hour. There are some people who can stay in these crazy 8 patterns for years, maybe their whole entire life. But see if you can recognize this. So let's start where it says sad and depressed. A lot of times people move through sadness and depression. They can stay that way for a while, and then they'll move into anger. Now, with anger is an interesting emotion. This is a highly charged emotion, and your body gets tired. So people get angry, and people like to get angry when they get to this crazy 8 pattern because it moves into action. When you get angry, you get people's attention. A lot of your needs are getting met. You feel confident more with yourself just because you're all charged up. You feel the connection with yourself. Your certainty level rises because you're angry. You got a lot of power behind your words. You can get variety. You can get people get reaction in all different ways around you. You meet a lot of your needs through getting angry. When people get stuck in this crazy 8 pattern, our bodies start to get tired though, and you can't stay angry forever. If somebody's crying or if somebody's just absolutely irate, just give them about 5 or 10 minutes and you'll just start to see them without you doing anything. They'll just gently start to come back down, and usually they come out of anger, and then they'll move into sadness and depression. And then they'll feel sorry for themselves. And even in this lower state, sadness and depression, even these lower states, you still connect with yourself, and it's a little bit different of emotion, so you get some variety out of this. You get significant because, you still get to connect with other people. And, if you have a sad story, then you get a lot of acknowledgement for that also. And then you don't want to stay down there too long because that's exhausting, and it's a very low state. You don't want to be honest. So they move back up to anger. They get pissed off about something else again. They get pissed off about something that's happening in politics or something that's happening on the news, something completely out of their control. They get pissed off, and they get all the people all connected with them again. And they go through this crazy 8 pattern. They go through this anger, sadness, depression. There's a whole list of emotions that can kind of show up in a crazy 8 pattern, but you kind of get the gist of it. When people go to extreme ranges with this kind of a crazy 8 pattern, then they're called bipolar, or they go, these have these manic highs, these manic lows. But most people who aren't diagnosed with bipolar still can get stuck in these crazy 8 patterns and literally just get stuck in here for long periods of time. But there's a couple things that people do to get out of this pattern. If you look to the right, a lot of people will pick destructive behaviors, or if you look up to the top left, pick constructive behaviors. The destructive behaviors seem to be easier. So if you're one of these people who's stuck in a crazy 8, or if you're one of these people who have relatives or friends who are in these crazy 8 patterns, then you'll see when they want to get out of these patterns, they're going to move over to things in the bottom right quadrant like foods. Foods and drugs and alcohol and smoking, even sex and porn and shopping. These are things that can distract you. These are things that can just pull you out of this pattern here, and it's a very easy escape. And food in particular is just a very simple thing to do. I mean, almost anyone on this line right here could go and have a piece of chocolate and feel good about themselves, at least for the moment, or they can have that feeling of, they can, again, they're going to meet their needs. They're certain that they're going to feel a certain way. If you smoke a cigarette, if you have a drink, or you do some kind of a drug, you're pretty positive what you're going to feel like immediately after that. Now, obviously, you're going to have a crash and there's going to be a consequence for it, but usually you're not thinking about that if you're trying to break out of a crazy pattern, because you're in a state of mind of sadness and depression and anger, and you're so bored or tired of being in that almost anything else is better than that. A lot of people, when they hit rock bottom, where a lot of people, when they have just had enough, or there's just too many things that are starting to stack up on top of them, then they either completely shift out of this pattern and they try a new behavior, or they literally go to the grave with it. One of the things that happened to me when I was paralyzed and I was going through my rehab, after about 8 weeks of being on Oxycontin, which really I thought Oxycontin in the first week or two was just a wonder drug. If you haven't been on it, it's almost like a codeine. It's almost like a morphine. It was just a fantastic painkiller. I mean, I felt just on top of the world. But after about 2 or 3 weeks of it, when my digestion started to back up and the crashing just had me hit these terrible lows, I mean, it was just right back to depression and sadness. And I thought I'd need these other stimulants. And before I know it, I was just hooked on this drug. Until I hit rock bottom, and then I started using exercise as a relief, and then I started getting into some of the good foods, and you see some of these things on the list. This is actually stuff that came, other than the dancing, everything else on here I used to kind of get out of my crazy 8 pattern. Meditation and prayer were fantastic ways for me to kind of escape the pain and reconnect with myself, and I was able to feel different parts of my body. I was able to take the pain and not so much make it disappear, but I was able to move it to different parts of my body. And I definitely want to do one of these transcendental meditation classes for you guys so you can get a sense of what that feels like, to be able to take energy in your body, whether it's pain, whether it's bad emotions, whether it's just a lot of stress that builds up in you, and move them throughout your body and just let them dissipate. Our bodies are designed to do this for us. But I was able to move out of this crazy pattern that I could have easily been stuck in. I could have easily gotten an impairment rating and been a crippled from the waist down. I could have easily gotten addicted to drugs. I could have easily gotten, Social Security impairment payments for, however much they are a month for the rest of my life. It wasn't until I broke out of that pattern and I really saw that there was a more compelling future than just what that was for me, until and then I started seeing a little bit of progress, and I saw the progress pull me out, and the progress gave me a little bit more motivation to believe that I could do this on my own. And then before I know, my progress was getting better and better, and I was really in a stronger place than I was before, and I knew there was no way I was ever going back. So that's a crazy 8 pattern. Now that you know kind of the framework of a crazy 8 pattern, you're going to be surprised how many relatives or people around you basically are stuck in a crazy 8 pattern. And one of the ways you can help pull people out of a crazy 8 pattern is to just bring awareness to how they're shifting from those lower states to those higher states, and just maybe help them find something a little bit more constructive as an exercise or a food to help pull them out of that. All right, so the other question which I posed to a lot of you guys was how much of your weight loss issue is really about food? And now that you've been through a couple of these slides here with about what the human needs are, what does food mean to you? I mean, you can write this down. You can put it in the questionnaire in here, but this is something that you should really acknowledge at this point, especially if you're in this contest now, and we've got a nice little window here to be able to measure you. We've got a nice little window here to have some support for you. This is a good opportunity to find out and ask yourself, what does food mean to you? Now, it's not going to mean just one thing. I mean, I grew up in a family where food meant a lot. I mean, food meant love. Food meant connection. Food meant, that it was a time to break bread with each other. For some of you, food can mean euphoria. Food can mean, for some of you, I know food means guilt. It can mean shame. Some of you have shifted over, and food now means fuel for your body. So depending on what food means to you, is going to be a very different decision-making process that you're going to go through when it's time to make a decision on what to eat. So ask yourself that. Take a couple of minutes before you sit down at your next meal, before breakfast or before lunch and dinner, and say, what is this meal for? And there's nothing wrong with having a meal for connection or euphoria, or to feel better about yourself. But I remember my sister when she broke up with her boyfriend, and it was straight to the couch with the ice cream and the Oreos. And then she's on the phone with her girlfriend, like eating ice cream, and it turned into, I saw what the need for the food was, and it turned into a party for herself to get out of the state of depression and humility. She was embarrassed, and she was heartbroken, and her self-confidence dropped. So she found a great way to connect with herself, and then she had this big problem that she was able to share with all of her girlfriends. And we're all going to go through those, but it's how long are you going to be stuck like that? How long is that going to be the excuse that you use on why they're making the food choices, or why are you stuck in this state of mind? And just so you know, most people, when they don't want to take accountability for themselves, they usually point to a couple things. They usually point to a problem or an event that's outside of their control. Because an event can't come back and argue with you. Or they blame it on somebody else. They blame it on a friend, or they blame it on a coach, or they blame it on a parent, or they blame it on a spouse, or they blame it on a partner. They blame it on somebody else outside of them, especially if they're not around and they're telling the story, because that person's definitely not there to stand up for themselves. But these things become things outside of ourselves. And the quicker you kind of take ownership and accountability, then you'll see that the change will happen, and you won't. It's almost a crazy cycle, because you get to perpetuate that story with yourself, and that can make it so you stay in these lower states also. I'm going to squint here and read this one. Do you punish yourself for something out of your control? Go ahead and raise your hand. Actually, I do see some hands being raised here. I'm going to finish this through, and we'll answer some questions here in a little bit. So, do you punish yourself for something out of your control, something from your past? We all do this. Everybody on this line has done something in their past they feel regretful for. Everybody on this line has done something that's hurt somebody else. Everybody on this line has done something that they wish they can go back and change. And if we could, that would be great, but we can't. A lot of things that happen in the past you just can't change, and you just have to accept what they are. The question here is, how much longer are you going to punish yourself for it? Can you relinquish that from yourself? Can you stop drinking the poison and trying to hurt somebody else? Can you take something that you've done that may have hurt somebody else in the past and let that go so you can move on and then not make that mistake again, or maybe make amends on a higher level with somebody? Another question that you want to ask yourself is, does this pattern of focusing on how you could have done something differently keep you from focusing on higher values like love and service to others? So that gets back to, what are you focusing on now? Is there something that's happened to you in the past, whether people have ridiculed you, or you've been put in a position where you were embarrassed, or you're put in humiliated, and you keep trying to come back and recreate that circumstance so you can feel strong, and so you can feel powerful, so you can feel significant again? Are you keep chasing a circumstance to kind of make up for something that's happened in the past? And why are you doing that? Are you missing things that are higher callings for you? Number 3, what is a personal metaphor you could use to describe this negative pattern you carry with you? So I don't know if you guys know, but about 8 or 9 years ago, I got into well, anybody who was before 2008, the real estate was fantastic. I got into some real estate trouble around 2008. It took me almost a year or two to really get that the metaphor wasn't so much that I failed in real estate. The metaphor, I wasn't carrying this heavy bag around. The metaphor that I had to use to change this negative pattern of guilt that I had for having gone through such just financial turmoil with all the losses, was that I had to look at that as an investment into my education. So just that little shift from going from being a complete failure to just now looking at it as it's an investment into my education of life. And that little shift right there kind of built me back up again, where I said, okay, I learned from that, and how can I do this? How can I use what I learned here to serve others? Number 4, is there blame, or is there a meanness that you inflict on yourself? Now, I know I'm guilty of this, and I know a lot of you guys in the line are guilty of this also. You may not admit to it a whole lot, but I can tell you right now that all of us, that almost everybody I've met is doing something to punish themselves on some level. And the quicker you can recognize what it is that you're punishing yourself for, and be truly honest about what that punishment is for or about, make amends, and quit punishing yourself so you can move on and then actually serve others on a higher level. That's a tremendous, tremendous lesson to get. And unfortunately, I had to go through this lesson more than once and cause pain for not cause pain for just me, but cause pain for people who I didn't want to cause pain with, because I put myself in this self-punishment mode. The quicker you can come out of that, the quicker you make amends for that. All right, so the pain-pleasure principle, this is another one of these basic principles that has gone through psychology, and it's almost like the string theory. This permeates through all different kinds of psychological principles and psychology strategies. But you should really understand this, that our brains are wired to avoid pain and move us towards pleasure. Our brains are really wired as simplistic as that. Right down to the neurological cellular level, our brains are wired pain or pleasure. It takes all the experiences that you had doing something. It takes all of the history of the education you had. It takes all the pain that you had, all the pleasure that you had. It takes everything, and in that second, when you focus on something and you're asking yourself, what does this mean? And the brain is just about to make a decision. It says, okay, pain or pleasure. The brain is always going to move towards pleasure and move away from pain. And other marketing people know this too, and you'll see sometimes on these ADT commercials, they'll show somebody jogging in front of a family's house, and they'll kick the door in, and basically when they want to show you that there's so much pain of this possibility of happening, that of course you got to get something that never ever would let that pain come into your life. So be aware that marketing knows this, but you should ask yourself: is the pain that you're afraid of? Is the pain that your brain is making a decision? Because you have to recognize that your brain is the computer system in your body, and your brain is your is not your soul. Your brain is not your brain is not the thinking part of you. It is a thinking processor like a computer. So have you ever done an exercise where you take the thought of consciousness and you move back about 6 feet behind yourself and you kind of look down so you can be aware, watching yourself as the observer? That observer is actually you watching your brain. Your brain is a highly sophisticated piece of just incredible creation, but your brain does not control your thoughts. You control your thoughts. Your brain is going to process this on a self-survival mode. Being able to move back, and this is what's so great about prayer and meditation, it lets you move back into the state of the observer. And as the state of the observer, you can ask yourself, well, the pain that my brain is thinking I'm going to experience is this, and now is the pain a real pain? Because your brain doesn't want you to ever even experience pain on any level. So is this pain a real or is this an imagined pain? Because the brain doesn't know the difference. There's a lot of research out there that shows that, if you can imagine yourself driving a super fast car or put yourself in experience, the brain doesn't know the difference between an imagined thought and a real thought. So sometimes our anxiety or sometimes our decision-making gets caught up because the brain is making a decision that's going to be painful, and it's not even based on a truth. It's based on some limiting belief that we've had pain and that we've associated in the past. And being able to be the observer and kind of pull back and see this, you can objectively ask yourself the question, is this a decision being based on true pain or not? And most of the time, if you look at this where the actual concern of the pain is coming from, it's going to come back to those two main fears, fear of not being enough or fear of losing love. So just know we're all wired this way. We're all wired this way. And the people who have the most clarity in life are the ones who are able to look through some of the illusions of pain and just make beautiful, certain, clear decisions, knowing that they're basing it from their heart and not so much just from what the brain tells them. All right, so pain and suffering. Pain and suffering is another concept as far as positive and negative emotion. Or I'm sorry, the pain and suffering principle. There's a formula that's out there. It's called when your life conditions don't match your blueprint is the recipe for failure, disappointment, and distress. So let's say that again. So here's the recipe, here's the formula for happiness, is when your life conditions that you're currently in match the blueprint of where you think you should be. So we all have a blueprint somewhere in our brain as far as where we should be financially. We all have a blueprint where we should be health-wise. We all have a blueprint that tells us where we should be attractiveness-wise, where we should be in the career, where we should be in a relationship. We all have a blueprint in our mind. Now, the quickest way to disappointment is to have things unfolding that don't match your blueprint. So when your life conditions don't match your model of the world, that's when you feel pain. And we all feel pain. Every one of us at one point is going to feel pain. Here's what you have to be able to differentiate, is the difference between pain and suffering. Suffering comes when your life conditions don't match your model of the world and you feel powerless to change it. Now, this is where the state that I was in when I was paralyzed. I mean, I thought that there was a possibility that this is how I was going to be stuck forever. And the feeling of powerlessness for anybody is literally almost like hell on earth. And suffering is truly that, meaning that you truly are powerless to change it. And I can tell you this after almost 25,000 patients and 15 years in practice. There are almost no circumstances where you're completely powerless. And just knowing that and having lived through that gives me a certain amount of fearlessness because I've already gone through the suffering and the hell on the earth and realized that it was such my state of mind of my fears that I wasn't confronting is where my suffering came from, because that's what gave me the hopelessness. And when I got true clarity on what my real fears were, then they were illusions. I was able to break through those. And you want to ask yourself this, is my life conditions matching my model of the world? And if they're not, then you got to change either one of two things. You either need to change the conditions that you're under, which is the decisions that you're making. The decisions that you're making that are keeping you in the conditions that you're in have to change. Or maybe you have a blueprint of the world that no longer serves you. Maybe you're thinking like 25, or being super rich and famous is really what your blueprint of the world is that you have to be. Hopefully that you've matured through the years and you realize that being rich and famous is maybe not exactly, your life condition. Isn't really what the blueprint is. Maybe the blueprint should be more geared around how many people's lives can you change. Maybe it should be geared more towards around, how much love can you give and how much can you get deeper into a relationship with someone on a level that you never even thought was possible. So ask yourself, what is your life conditions now? And does it match your model of the world? And if it doesn't, then let's discuss it. I do want to set a face-to-face up pretty shortly where all of us can get together, and I want to share some of this stuff. All right, so stacking and conflicting emotions. So there's positive and negative emotions. Now, what happens over time with a lot of us, and this is again, this is another psychological term with stacking, is that have you ever had either a roommate or a friend that you've had, and they steal your clothes for a little while, and then they give them back, and then they tell you they're going to meet you out, and then they don't show up, and then they borrow the car and they put gas, and all of a sudden all these negative things keep happening and happening, and then they do one thing one day, and you just blow up on them. Or you might be the friend on the other side where you've had a friend that just blows up on you for no reason, but when you look back at it, they had all these negative stacking emotions start to kind of boil up. Or sometimes, it's funny watching the Bob Newhart show, and he was consulting a couple, and she said all I did was pass him a salt, and he told me I was ruining his life. But it turned out that it's just that you get to that point in the relationship where everything just boiled over, everything just came spilling out at once, and this is why you want to have good communication. But more importantly, is the emotions that you choose here. Is that the more emotions that you choose to interpret that are happening to you, humiliation, disrespect, abuse, and a lot of, abuse is something that does happen, but how do you label this? Are you being somebody who's a victim, or are you somebody who's a survivor? Disrespect, as far as being a negative emotion, what has to happen in your life for you to feel disrespected? And again, are those rules that you set in place, are they realistic? Does somebody just need to roll their eyes at you, and then you take that as disrespect, and does disrespect for you mean no love? Or humiliation. What has to happen for you? What are the rules that you set in place for you to feel humiliated? And if you have these rules in place, is there any way that you can change these rules to tweak them just a little bit, so if you keep feeling these emotions, these negative emotions of disrespect, or feeling abused, or feeling or feeling taken advantage of, can you change the rules in your life so you don't have to feel those emotions? And if you can, if it's truly happened, you obviously want to move yourself out of that situation. But there's very few situations that should be repetitively happening over and over and over again. If that's the case with you, and that's one of the reasons why people find themselves back in that negative loop again, or that repeating loop again, is because they have made these rule structures so they feel these emotions rise to the surface, and then it's like a record player. They go right back to that same pattern of self-sabotaging behavior again. If you can recognize that repeating process happening and just kind of scratch that record, that pattern won't be able to repeat itself anymore. You say, oh, that's disrespect. That person rolled their eyes at me, or that person, that person's not looking at me now when they talk, or I don't like the tone they take with me. If you can recognize that that's a rule that you put in place, that may just be the way that person communicates, but that's a rule that you put in place to feel that emotion, then that brings a lot more clarity to the situation, so you don't feel like you're repeating that same obstacle again. Because what happens when you go into these states again? You go into these lower states, and then you go back into a little, maybe of a crazy 8 pattern, and you feel stuck and you're hopeless, and you can't change the world that you're living in, and it's gonna make you go back to these comfort foods. It's gonna make you go back to these old habits of drugs. It's gonna make you go back to these old habits of distractions that you had in the past. So be able to recognize those. Be able to recognize some of those positive and negative emotions patterns that you have. I got 2 more here. Here's what I want to ask you. I want to ask you what you could do to leverage the change to improve in these areas. So I'm going to open the lines up here in just a minute. Here, we'll open up the Q&A in here. What could you take to leverage yourself to stick more to a better healthy eating habit? I'm not going to say diet, because diet sounds so temporary, but for some people, it's a heart attack. I remember Tom doing this last year, and he was afraid that he was going to have a heart attack, and his diabetes was really getting out of hand. He was afraid he wasn't going to be able to see his kids or be there for his wife. So that was the leverage that he used to wake up a little bit and change his habits. And we have another patient in office. Her name's Jan. She just turned 50 last month, and she just said, I just woke up and I said, enough is enough. I just don't want to live. I just don't want to have. There's more to this. I just don't want to have the same problems I have. I just want to change. And she just made the decision, and she leveraged it against herself, and she completely changed her relationship. She changed her career, and she's just happy as she's ever been her entire life. For some people, it might be the brink of a divorce. For some people, it just might be, they just can't take it anymore. But find areas in your life that you can use to leverage yourself to some more of these constructive behaviors to get more of the outcome that you want. All right, so here's an exercise I want you guys to do. I'm gonna repost this. This is an excellent exercise. You'll see I took the 6 blocks there on the bottom with the 6 human needs. Find an area of your life. Now, there's the 4 areas that most people work with, is either the family, the work, their finances, or their health. And within those areas, you want to ask yourself on a scale from 1 to 10, how does each one of these, and for us, let's just go ahead and focus on health here, but you could pick an area that you're happy with and test this. You could pick an area that you're unhappy with and test this. So let's take health, for example. We'll just put this one out there. So on a scale from 1 to 10, you know, how certain, I'll do this with me, how certain am I that I am in full control of my health? I am 100% certain. On a scale from 1 to 10, I am 10% certainty that I am in control of my health. How significant do I feel that I can control my health? Unbelievable. It's a 10 or it'd be 100 on here that I know that if I'm at my healthiest, if I know that I have my highest energy, I can make a change. I feel important. I feel like what I do matters. I feel that I have an incredible amount of certainty with the words that I say because I'm living that. How much variety does it give me? I don't know how much variety I get out of it, but I get enough energy to make it so that my life is always full of surprises and I'm ready to tackle the surprises. The growth and contribution on a scale from 1 to 10, this is my career. This is what I've been able to do. I am constantly learning new and cutting-edge ways to stay healthy for myself and people around me. How much love and connection do I get with it? I mean, I don't want to sound like one of these nuts, but I totally love myself. I mean, I really do. I mean, I don't stare at the mirror at myself, but I love that I'm an absolute miracle of God. I love that my body is a temple just given as a gift by the Creator, and I find that this is my responsibility. You know, I'm probably going to be on this planet somewhere between 70 and 99 years, and that's not a lot of time. That's not a lot of time, so I want to love this body. I want to love this temple, and I want to use this to connect with other people. I want to use this to love my family more. And how much contribution do I get from this? I mean, I do feel like I be able to give, like calls like this, I get to give as much as I can. You know, I have my own style of, and I know I talk fast and I do my best to slow down, but I get excited about this stuff. You know, so I'm going to make sure I have this in writing so you guys can come back and use it again, but I definitely feel that I'm contributing beyond myself when I'm able to share this health. So I've got some hands up here. I'm going to go ahead and figure out how to unmute the calls here. All right, so I see Marianne DeLauder, you've got your hand up here. If your hand's up, Marianne, can you hear me? Or Mary Beth,
Yeah,
sorry.
it's okay. It's Beth. You had said to raise your hand earlier, and I did, and I just never took it down.
Oh, okay. Well, do you want to have a comment or a question? I'm glad you're on the line tonight. You were the first people that responded. Very happy to see that.
It's amazing. This is amazing information. I think there's a lot of different ways I can use this in my life. Answers a lot of questions, and psychology works for me, so I'm kind of curious to see how it goes.
What's one of the main concepts tonight that you'll think you'll be able to apply in your life?
I really like this 6 human needs test thing because it could put a lot of things in perspective for me. Not just for me, but like you're saying, relationships with others, children, family, work, you know, answer a lot of questions and, you know, kind of like, why am I here? I mean, I try to be positive and happy, but this brings up a lot of things that may, you know, help me get down to the seat of some other things or why I am who I am, what sparks me.
Good. It's funny I said it because I remember last year when you did your testimonial, one of the things that really stuck out for your testimonial, and a lot of people commented on it. A lot of moms in particular said that you were doing this for yourself because you had been so long, you know, making decisions based on your husband and your children and everybody else but you.
Right.
Have you been able to learn a lot from that?
I really have, Dr. B. It's amazing. I always felt happy, but I always felt happy by giving to others or doing for others to make others happy. And I never felt like I had neglected myself, but when I look back, I really was robbing myself of personal happiness and like even just the eating part of it. I was eating 1 meal a day. I was robbing my body of, you know, metabolism that would work properly. And I was holding calories that my body shouldn't have been holding, but it never knew when it was going to get a meal again because I was always on the fly trying to help everybody else and make sure that everybody else their needs were taken care of. So now that I have given, I give myself about 2 hours a day out of a full, you know, 14, 15-hour day at least that I'm giving away to others. But in order for me to stay on an even keel, keep my head clear, it has really made a difference. So like I said, these are just kind of fine-tuning, if you will, some of the things that I already learned from last year. And I'm kind of curious to see where it goes.
I'm excited too. So do you mind if I do an exercise with you real quick?
Sure.
Let's go through this. Let's see where you are on these. Okay, so which one of these do you want to test here? The family, the work, the finances, or the health? Which one of these areas of your life would you say you're the happiest and which are you're the least happiest with?
Happy, I would be family. Unhappy, work.
All right, so let's do family first. So on a scale from 1 to 10, where would you put the certainty in your family? The certainty and the safety.
10.
10. Significance. How significant do you feel with the family?
10.
Variety. How much surprises and new stuff do you get in your life?
7.
7. Okay. How about growth? Do you feel like you're growing? Have you learned a lot from your
Probably,
children?
yes, probably an 8 to 10, yeah.
Okay. How about love and connection?
Probably, yeah, like a 9.
Excellent. And contribution?
10.
Excellent.
Always giving.
So anything typically over a 7 means that you're satisfied in that area. So everything that you just said, this is a perfect example that your life conditions match your blueprint. So
Okay.
this is excellent. So let's go over to work.
Ugh.
All right. So right off the bat, we get an idea of what work's about. So let's find out where some of the challenges of work are. So at work, how safe and certain do you feel on a scale from 1 to 10?
1 to 10, it's going to be like a 2.
A 2. So what is it that you do not feel sure or certain you're going to keep your job, or how to do the job, or?
No, I'm more than competent to do the job. I'm undercompensated, underemployed. I have a job, not a career.
Okay, so that leads me to the next one. On a scale from 1 to 10, where would you put your feeling of significance at work?
No more than a 4.
Okay. All right,
I
how
mean,
much
I
work?
personally feel that I'm better than a 4, but the significance of my job compared to everyone else, I think is like a 4.
You mean compared to everybody else in your peer group or at work?
At work, just as a whole.
Okay. All right, how much variety do you have at work?
Probably like a 6 or 7.
Okay, so you actually like your work.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, how much growth do you feel like you're getting at your job?
2.
So how much love and connection are you feeling at work?
2.
And how much do you feel like you're contributing beyond yourself at work?
I give my all and more. I hear that from everybody, but the feedback I get from my superiors, I guess, is what holds me back.
They're saying you could do more.
Yes.
Okay. So you don't feel like you're really contributing up to where? You feel like you're doing the work.
If others would let me, show what I am capable of, but I feel like it gets stifled.
All right, so obviously it looks like the family is fulfilling all your needs, and it looks like work is basically giving the variety that you need, so you're actually interested in the work. And even though the certainty may be low, there's a certain level of certainty that you have because you get a paycheck.
Yes, yes.
So of the 6 needs, you're only getting 2 of them met by work. So of course that's going to be an area that's going to, obviously not going to be something,
Scale, yeah.
It's going to be something that you either going to have to find a way to either move within the company and find a way to get these needs met to really fulfill that part of your life, or look for a different kind of work that's going to do it for you. You don't necessarily have to quit your job, but there are ways to recognize what parts of your job are not fulfilling your needs, and then where could you focus on to kind of bring those levels back up again.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's a great exercise. I appreciate you sharing that. Okay,
sure.
So I'm gonna. We got about 6 minutes here. I was gonna take anybody. I've got 2 other hands raised here. Let me see if this works. Mary, thanks for sharing that with us tonight.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, I've got a hand raised here. It's Eco. Is this Kristen Pierce? Quality resolution. Eco quality resolutions. Get your hand raised. 407.
That would be Lisa.
Hey, Lisa.
Yeah. My hand was raised from the beginning.
Oh, good. Okay. So you followed directions very well. So what did you think? Did you get anything out of tonight's call, Lisa?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Made me do some self-evaluating and looking at, okay, why do I keep thinking about things that cause self-sabotage?
What are some of the self-sabotaging behaviors you were able to recognize tonight?
Some of the things similar to the last person. I've always put everybody else first, and I've lost a lot of people sequentially significant in my life that I was giving everything to. So now I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, now what do I do? And I had the bright idea when I went to your meeting, take care of me.
Good for you.
So that's what I'm
So
focusing on now.
give me a time frame. How long have you put yourself as a priority?
This is very recent.
Okay.
My,
Good.
my last loss was actually almost a week ago. A week ago tomorrow. I lost my dog, and I was giving everything to him. He had
Oh,
cancer.
sorry to hear that.
And it's like, once he was gone, I was like, okay, now what? So I
So how long?
can't dwell on that. Losses are losses. They're all in a better place. So now focus on myself so that I don't join them prematurely.
Good. That's just a wonderful way to look at that. How long did you have your dog?
I had him for 16 years.
Oh my gosh, that was a family member.
Yes,
You lost a loved one.
yes. And I had his sister as well, and he was the one that was closest to me. So it felt more like I had him 32 years as opposed to the equal time I had her.
Well, I think you're making a healthy choice by putting the focus back on yourself now and looking at at all the experiences you had as being a blessed time, and now what can you do to honor yourself and honor your memories? I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely. And I'm very blessed to have you in my ear.